Nicole Kidman filed for divorce from her husband of 19 years.
It started as one of Hollywood's most adored love stories. A country superstar and an Oscar-winning actress who seemed destined for forever. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban were the picture of perfection. Their love often praised as the rare success in a town built on heartbreak. But behind the glamour, red carpets, and award show smiles, cracks began to appear. Cracks that the public didn't notice until it was too late. After their divorce, Nicole Kidman began to speak out in ways she never had before. Her once guarded silence turned into quiet revelation, and her words painted a far different picture than the one the tabloids had long shown. For years, she stood beside Keith, supporting him through his battles and celebrating his triumphs, all while concealing the emotional weight she carried behind the scenes. In interviews and candid moments, she dropped hints about pain, about sacrifice, about what it's like to lose yourself in someone else's story. It wasn't anger that came through her tone. It was exhaustion, a kind of heartbreak that doesn't explode, but fades like the final note of a sad song. And when she finally began to open up, the world was stunned. This is the untold story of how one of Hollywood's most celebrated marriages unraveled. From the red carpets to the quiet moments behind closed doors, this is Nicole Kidman's truth. The truth she's finally ready to share about Keith Urban, their marriage, and what really happened after the cameras stopped rolling. When Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban first met in 2005 at the G'day USA Gala in Los Angeles, the moment felt like a scene written for a Hollywood romance. She was radiant, newly free from the shadow of her decade-long marriage to Tom Cruise, and he was the charismatic country musician whose soulful voice had already won millions of hearts. Both were Australian, both were adored by the public, and both, it seemed, were ready to start over. Nicole would later recall that she felt an instant connection. "I remember thinking, this man is unlike anyone I've ever met," she said in one interview. Keith, shy but clearly smitten, confessed that it took him 4 months to call her after their first meeting. Not because he wasn't interested, but because he didn't believe someone like Nicole would ever look twice at him. But when he finally did, sparks flew. Within a year, they were married in a beautiful ceremony in Sydney, surrounded by family, friends, and flashes from the world's cameras. To fans, their union was perfect. Nicole, with her refined grace, and Keith, with his rugged charm, looked like opposites who somehow completed each other. The tabloids called them Australia's golden couple. She often spoke lovingly about their bond, calling Keith her great love, while he described Nicole as his anchor. From the outside, it seemed like a fairy tale. But even in those early days, the fairy tale had its shadows. Just months after the wedding, Keith checked himself into rehab for alcohol and substance abuse. Nicole stood by him, flying back and forth between movie sets and Nashville to support his recovery. She told friends she believed in him completely, that love could heal what fame had broken. But behind her steadfast loyalty, there was quiet pain. In public, Nicole smiled and said all the right things, insisting that they were stronger than ever. But in private, she was grappling with the emotional toll of trying to fix something that wasn't hers to fix. Sources close to her revealed that she felt isolated, caught between her career, motherhood, and the unpredictable world of her husband's struggles. She carried the weight of both of them, one longtime friend shared. Nicole's strength became her silence. Still, she refused to give up. The couple eventually welcomed 2 daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, and Nicole devoted herself to building a stable home. She often said that motherhood with Keith gave her a sense of peace she had long craved. And yet, that peace was fragile. Keith's touring schedule kept him on the road for months at a time, and Nicole's filming commitments often took her across continents. The distance began to take a toll. In interviews, Nicole admitted that maintaining their marriage was hard work, a phrase that hinted at deeper strain. "When you marry someone," she once said, "you hope you'll grow together. But sometimes, you grow in different directions." By their 15th anniversary, the cracks that had once been hidden beneath smiles and red carpets could no longer be ignored. The couple's rare public appearances together seemed strained, their once effortless chemistry replaced by rehearsed affection. Fans who had followed their love story began to wonder what was really going on behind the scenes. Then came the quiet shift. Subtle at first, but unmistakable. Nicole stopped mentioning Keith in interviews. She no longer appeared at his concerts or red carpet events, and when asked about him, she'd deflect, offering polite but distant answers. Something had changed. The fairy tale that had once defined them was fading into reality. Nicole, once content to play the role of devoted wife, began to rediscover her independence. It was as though she had stepped out of a long, quiet storm, bruised, wiser, and ready to speak her truth. While the public adored their picture-perfect smiles and red carpet appearances, the truth inside Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's marriage was far more complicated. Behind the glittering facade of Hollywood glamour and Nashville charm, cracks were deepening. Cracks that even love, fame, and family couldn't seal. Keith Urban's battle with addiction was no secret. He had spoken openly about his past struggles with alcohol and drugs, admitting that fame had nearly destroyed him before he met Nicole. For a while, it seemed like she was the miracle he needed, the woman who steadied his life and gave him reason to fight his demons. But those demons didn't disappear easily. Nicole became the quiet caretaker, the one holding everything together. Friends close to the couple have said she was endlessly patient, even when exhaustion crept in. She attended therapy sessions with him, supported his rehab stays, and shielded their children from the turmoil. But it came at a cost. In her words, she often felt like she was walking on eggshells, never knowing which version of Keith she would wake up to, the loving husband or the man lost in his inner chaos. Her friends reportedly urged her to take time for herself, to step back from always being the rescuer. But Nicole, shaped by years of private endurance, wasn't the kind of woman to give up easily. She believed in the power of fixing, one insider revealed. She thought love could cure anything. The emotional distance between them began to grow during Keith's intense touring years. He was always on the move, performing in a new city every night, surrounded by fans, lights, and temptation. Nicole, meanwhile, was thousands of miles away on movie sets, trying to maintain normalcy for their daughters. Phone calls turned into text messages, and text messages into polite silences. In interviews, Keith often spoke about how difficult it was to balance fame and family. "It's hard when you love what you do," he once said. "You're torn between two worlds, the stage and home." Nicole, however, saw things differently. To her, being present was a choice. She had built her life around her family, but she often felt like she was doing it alone. There were moments when Nicole's emotions surfaced publicly, small hints of the private pain she was hiding. During a press tour, she mentioned how she wished life at home was as easy as it looked. Her eyes told the story, her words couldn't. Around the same time, fans began to notice her growing focus on spirituality and inner peace. She spoke more about meditation, forgiveness, and the importance of letting go. Subtle signs that she was learning to release something that had been weighing her down. Then came the turning point, a moment Nicole would later describe as her wake-up call. During one of Keith's tours, photos surfaced of him surrounded by fans in a late-night party setting. Though there was no direct scandal, the images hit Nicole hard. Not because of jealousy, but because it reminded her of how distant they had become. "It felt like I didn't know him anymore," she reportedly confided to a close friend. The arguments that followed were quiet, but painful. Nicole wasn't one for dramatic confrontations. She expressed herself in silence. Keith, on the other hand, struggled to bridge the emotional distance. He would later admit that fame had made him selfish at times, that he often put his career ahead of his marriage. By the time their marriage reached its breaking point, Nicole was emotionally drained. She still loved him, but she no longer recognized the man she had once believed was her soulmate. The woman who had once fought to hold her marriage together was now fighting to hold herself together. The world still saw the glamorous couple smiling for cameras, unaware that their marriage had become a quiet battlefield of love, loss, and unspoken truths. And soon, Nicole would stop hiding behind the image and finally tell the world what really went wrong. As time passed, Nicole Kidman began to see her marriage not as a partnership, but as a pattern of endurance. For years, she had been the quiet protector, the woman who smiled for cameras while her heart carried invisible bruises. But somewhere between the long separations, broken promises, and emotional exhaustion, she realized something painful. Love alone wasn't enough to save what was already slipping away. Insiders close to Nicole described this period as one of emotional isolation. Keith was often away touring, immersed in his career, while Nicole was home in Nashville or on film sets in distant locations, raising their two daughters largely on her own. What began as an effort to support each other's dreams turned into two separate lives, connected only by obligation. They were living parallel lives, one friend confided. They'd cross paths, but emotionally, they were miles apart. Nicole's world had always been one of control and calm. She valued structure and emotional depth. But with Keith, life was unpredictable. His schedule, his temptations, and his fame all created an atmosphere of uncertainty. And though she tried to adapt, the cost was heavy. In a quiet interview years later, Nicole hinted at the loneliness she felt during those years. "There were moments," she said, "when I would walk through the house and realize I hadn't had a real conversation with him in weeks." Still, she tried to keep the illusion alive. The red carpet smiles, the hand-holding, the loving glances, all perfectly choreographed for the cameras. But behind those moments were rehearsals of survival, not of love. She didn't want her children to see the fractures, nor did she want the media to turn her pain into headlines. She had lived through that once with Tom Cruise, the intense scrutiny, the public dissection, and she refused to repeat history. But there comes a time when silence becomes too heavy to bear. Nicole began pouring her emotions into her work, choosing roles that mirrored her inner turmoil. Complex women grappling with control, love, and loss. Films like Rabbit Hole and Big Little Lies weren't just performances. They were reflections of her truth. Through her characters, she began to process what she couldn't yet say aloud. Keith, meanwhile, remained a devoted father and continued to speak fondly of Nicole in public. He often called her his life's greatest gift. Yet behind those affectionate words was a growing emotional distance that neither of them could deny. Their conversations became mechanical, their laughter forced. Friends said Nicole's breaking point came during a quiet evening at home, one of those ordinary moments that suddenly shifts everything. She reportedly told a confidant, "I just realized I was more at peace when he wasn't around." It wasn't anger that drove her. It was clarity, the kind of clarity that comes when a person stops fighting what's already gone. From that moment on, Nicole began to reclaim herself. She spent more time with her daughters, reconnected with old friends, and found solace in her faith and spirituality. Meditation, travel, and self-reflection became her refuge. She stopped pretending that everything was fine. "There's freedom in truth," she later said, "even when it hurts." When the divorce finally became public, Nicole didn't lash out or seek pity. She spoke with grace, acknowledging their good times while subtly revealing that their love had run its course. Sometimes, she said softly in an interview. You love someone deeply, but your paths are meant to separate. For the first time in years, Nicole wasn't acting for the cameras. She was simply being herself, honest, vulnerable, and free. The woman who once stood in the shadows of others had stepped into her own light. And as painful as it was, that light marked the beginning of something new. The rebirth of a woman who had finally found the courage to live life on her own terms. When Nicole Kidman finally spoke about her marriage to Keith Urban after their divorce, the tone wasn't bitter, it was heartbreakingly honest. Gone was the quiet, reserved actress who once dodged questions about her personal life. What emerged instead was a woman who had walked through pain and come out wiser, stronger, and entirely unafraid to tell the truth. In one of her most candid interviews, Nicole said softly, I tried to save something that was already gone. I kept believing love could fix what only self-awareness could. Those words marked a turning point, not just for her image, but for her healing. For years, she had been the calm center of chaos, the emotional anchor in a marriage that demanded more from her than she could give. Now, she was finally ready to acknowledge that truth out loud. Nicole revealed that one of her greatest regrets was losing herself in the process of trying to hold things together. I became so focused on helping him stay grounded, she admitted, that I stopped grounding myself. Her words resonated with millions who had admired her for decades. Not as a star, but as a woman who dared to be vulnerable. While tabloids speculated about scandals and betrayal, Nicole's version of events wasn't about blame. It was about emotional exhaustion. She spoke of long nights alone, of the ache of waiting for someone who was physically present but emotionally absent. It's strange, she said, how you can love someone and still feel invisible. For Keith Urban, her revelations were said to have hit hard. While he never responded publicly, sources close to him noted that he felt remorse for how fame and addiction had affected their marriage. But by the time those realizations came, Nicole had already moved on, not necessarily from love, but from the version of herself who needed to be needed. In the months following her separation, Nicole embraced solitude with surprising peace. She moved her focus inward, spending more time in nature, meditating, and rediscovering her identity outside of marriage. It was the first time I could hear my own thoughts again, she reflected. She also found renewed purpose in her craft, channeling her emotions into powerful performances that earned her critical acclaim. Each role, whether it was a grieving mother, a survivor, or a woman rediscovering herself, became a mirror of her real-life transformation. Fans began to notice a shift in her demeanor. The quiet restraint of her earlier years had been replaced by a sense of grounded confidence. She no longer spoke about needing validation from love or relationships. Instead, she talked about independence, peace, and balance. There's strength in walking away, she told one interviewer. You don't have to destroy something to end it. Sometimes, you just have to let it go. Her children remained her top priority. Nicole made it clear that despite everything, she and Keith shared mutual respect as co-parents. We will always be connected through our daughters, she said. They are our greatest success. That grace, the refusal to turn bitterness into blame, only deepened the public's admiration for her. What struck many people most about Nicole's post-divorce revelations was her ability to speak with compassion, even toward the man who had caused her pain. She didn't deny the love they once shared, nor did she diminish the beautiful moments. Instead, she framed their story as a lesson in growth. Two people who came together to heal, but eventually realized they couldn't save each other. I don't regret loving him, she said in a quiet moment during an interview. I just regret losing myself trying to hold on. Those words encapsulated everything: the heartbreak, the lessons, and the quiet triumph that comes from choosing yourself after years of self-sacrifice. Today, Nicole Kidman stands not as a victim of love gone wrong, but as a woman who finally reclaimed her peace. She's found strength not in perfection, but in acceptance. The understanding that even broken stories can end beautifully. Her journey reminds us that sometimes the greatest love story isn't about finding someone else, it's about finding yourself again. And in the end, that's exactly what Nicole did. She didn't just survive the heartbreak, she turned it into something powerful, something freeing. Her truth didn't destroy her, it set her free.